study of 12.8 million people.
Just a small study.
Small study. Yeah. So that's what I'm picking on. And what they did was they had a U-shaped relationship between cholesterol and death. Now, what is a U-shape? You think of the letter U, right? It's got a bottom and a top. So if you want deaths, you want to be at the bottom, right? The bottom part of the U. Now, for male and female, it's approximately the same. And these are American figures, and I'll convert them to you. You should be around about 200 to 260 millimoles per deciliter, which is around about 6 to 6.7 is our numbers, the Australian numbers, to live the longest.
Yeah.
Now, that is considered high by anybody's standard, isn't it? Yet, it's not causation, it's correlation between longevity and the cholesterol. So we want, for longevity, cholesterol is about 6 to 6.7.
Hey guys, welcome to the ATP project. You're with your host Steve and Nick. Hey Steve-o.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm pumped. I'm pumped for this one, Steve.
I'm actually, this is going to sound weird because I've done 400 and something podcasts, a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a little bit nervous. In fact, I usually bring my drink in here with a...
you do, Jen? Yeah,
I know, but I didn't this time because I drank on. I don't know how long this will go because it looks like a big one because I can't even see the table.
No, we've got papers everywhere. So I can't even explain the amount of papers we've got here.
This is tough. Now you and I are qualified naturopaths. You're still practicing. You know, I've been practicing or been a naturopath for almost 30 years now. And this is probably one of the most hottest topics that every dinner table is spoken about. Yeah. Every human on earth knows about this one thing, and it's cholesterol. Yeah. Now, just saying that word is controversial, isn't it?
It is. And don't switch off because it's all about cholesterol.
Nah.
This is really fascinating because there has been a lot of new papers come out about LDL and the levels of LDL, what really they should be. So we thought, you know what, let's do a podcast on it because there's a bit circulating at the moment. Oh, yeah. And then that was probably a bad thing to do because we've gone down the rabbit hole and we now can't get out. So it's just an endless chasm of conflicting evidence and what's right, what's wrong. Like we've got so many papers on the table and we really did struggle to find an answer. Yeah. And as you say all the time, the science is never settled. Never. So we're not here to say this is the correct, thing that should be this level and this is wrong because we can't find any research to back any of that up.
I can give you some platitudes, and I'm going to call them platitudes at the start of this, just to clear the air and just to give everyone a little bit of very, very, very basic knowledge. Cholesterol is a type of substance that's made in the body that makes all your hormones, so we need it. Yep. Okay, it's made in the liver, and the form that's made in the liver is called LDL cholesterol, or low-density lipoprotein, and we often call that, and you're ready for me to contradict myself in about 10 minutes, the bad cholesterol. Yeah. And then we have this other cholesterol called HDL, high-density lipoprotein, which is often called the good cholesterol. Now, in the 90s, when I was learning about cholesterol for the first time, that was easy. Yeah, no, if I got out of this whole thing then, and I just think, oh, well, that's it. You've got to reduce this shit stuff and improve this good stuff. We've even got drugs that can do that now. But it's absolutely minefield. And before the podcast, we were talking about all sorts of weird science, quantum it's just, conspiracy stuff. We off camera, we go a bit nuts because we love chatting. And Matt, who's behind the camera, who talks about it too, we have these chats. This is kind of one of those things.
It is. Yeah. So we actually did a cholesterol podcast late last year. Yep. So that was a little bit different. So we thought we'd revisit and talk about obviously the new research papers that have come out, the new studies that have come out. And we thought we'd go more into subfractions as well in this podcast rather than we did last year. This is a bit of a different topic. So that's kind of what we're going to be diving into today. A lot of the new research, a lot of the controversy about the LDL levels, where they should be, and then sort of also discuss subfractions, and because they're a really important part of the picture that is often overlooked.
Yes.
So we're going to explain a bit of that. But it's going to be a good
tricky.
one. Like our heads were spinning by the end.
Oh, it's crazy. And do you remember, my cat Flatface who died about a year ago? Yes. His real name's Luther. Yes. Now, he's called Luther because he was Martin Luther King. Okay. And he said that all men are created equal. No, I'm getting somewhere with this. I'm going to bring this back. I'm talking about cholesterol. But, he said all men are created equal and all this sort of stuff. And we should be judged by the content of a character. All cholesterol is not created equally. all LDL is not created equally. All HDL is not created equally. There's, as you say, subfractions, and there's, it's not just LDL's one thing.
No.
There's about 10 of them.
There's different classes of subfractions. So it's super, super complicated.
Oh.
We're trying to simplify it as much as we can, but yeah, we just need to dive in. Really.
Oh, well, let's dive in. The first thing you know about cholesterol is it causes heart disease, doesn't it? So give me some figures around, like someone gets wheeled into the hospital, they've had a heart attack. That's the most common cause of death in Australia still to this very day. Yeah. So a lot of people get heart attacks, they survive them and all that sort of thing. So assume they get to the hospital and alive. How many of them have dyslipidemia or bad cholesterol?
So high cholesterol accounts for only 20 to 30% of coronary artery disease.
Wow.
20 to 30%.
Okay, so about a quarter.
That's right. So not everyone with high cholesterol gets atherosclerosis.
Yep.
And a lot of times patients that have atherosclerosis have fairly what's considered normal levels of cholesterol.
Okay, so atherosclerosis is when the arteries clog up, and you get this narrowing, and I think you're going to call about Glavkov later, aren't you?
Glavkov remodeling. I'm going to just show a little bit of a diagram to explain that, because people think that the artery blocks up, which it does, but up until even 10 minutes before a heart attack, the artery is actually open.
Oh yeah, it's open.
Yeah. So the plaque will show that, But yes, so over 50% of patients with acute coronary syndrome have normal cholesterol levels on hospital administration.
Well, that's about half the normal population.
That's right.
So there's very little, correlation. There's not even a correlation there.
No.
Now, without correlation in the science terms, you don't have causation.
That's right.
So all of a sudden, you've just blown a myth there in the first 5 minutes that cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease directly, or the total cholesterol, we'll call it.
Cholesterol, yes, exactly.
Amazing.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? So,
it is amazing. So,
all right. So there's obviously conflicting stuff on all this sort of stuff, and it's very interesting. But isn't that very interesting? So
it is. So
yes.
So when we talk about particle size, we're going to talk about particle size. So particle size matter, the number of particles, the type of particles, the different categories and subfractions and all that sort of thing all actually matters more. HDL levels, we're going to talk about that they're not always high, is not always better.
No,
with the
I'm going
high
to give you
density
some bad
lipoprotein
news
levels.
about HDL cholesterol, and some good news and some more bad news.
That's right.
This is what it's all. Everyone, the good cholesterol is not good. The LDL is not bad. It's become too complex for that.
Yeah, it has.
We can give you some basic facts around cholesterol, total cholesterol. We can start there if you want, and then we can talk about the arteries and that sort of thing. And there's a nice chart here, and it's published in Nature. And I'm going to sort of take the time to read the titles, because people are going to go, that's BS.
Yeah, poor Matt's going to have to add all these links in. We've got so many papers. But if you do want these studies, you can contact us, or that they might be in the show notes. It depends if Matt has the time to put them all in there or not.
All right, so there's a major paper. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, which looked at total cholesterol levels and death rate and of all mortality. Okay, so I've picked on mortality a lot here because cholesterol and heart disease, as you correctly point out, is not the only. There's other things. Okay, so I've picked mortality as the endpoint. In other words, you're dying.
Yeah.
So what they did in this particular study, it was published in Scientific Reports in Nature, and it says total cholesterol and all-cause mortality by sex and age, a prospective study of 12.8 million people.
Just a small study.
Small study. Yeah. So that's what I'm picking on. And what they did was they had a U-shaped relationship between cholesterol and death. Now, what is a U-shape? You think of the letter U, right? It's got a bottom and a top. So if you want deaths, you want to be at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
The bottom part of the U. Now, for male and female, it's approximately the same. And these are American figures, and I'll convert them to you. You should be around about 200 to 260 millimoles per deciliter, which is around about 6 to 6.7 is our numbers, the Australian numbers, to live the longest.
Yeah.
Now, that is considered high by anybody's standard, isn't it?
Yet, it is.
It's not causation, it's correlation between longevity and the cholesterol. So we want, for longevity, cholesterol is about 6 to 6.7.
Yep.
Already blowing something out of the water. Because remember the magic 5.5?
Yes.
When the doctor got my cholesterol checked, I don't know why she checked it. I didn't ask for it because I don't really care much. And it was 4.3. And it was highlighted in red. And I went, what does that mean? It's a bit low. No, that's a bit high. We want it below 4 now. And I went, are you serious? now look where 4 is on the graph. It's all this death.
It's coming up,
It's death for men and women. So, and that's 55 to 64, which is my age group, unfortunately. And it's all the same across all age groups pretty much. But there's less correlation when you get older. So the older, cholesterol doesn't matter as much. But isn't that amazing that they want it to be below 4? Now, why is this so? And why is, when there's data like this on 12.8 or 6, whatever, million people. Isn't that incredible?
That is amazing.
So that's total cholesterol. We're going to go to subfractions in a sec. So we want, for longevity, cholesterol to be 6 to 6.7.
Yes, and for total cholesterol, if people don't know, that's the combination of HDL and LDL combined. It's not
all of them.
All of them.
Correct.
So that's pretty. And this is funny because there's a lot of people get very upset about this, I find.
I'm going to get upset. What are we upset about now?
Because I mean, particularly if someone's been told they have high cholesterol, they have to get it down. They're on a statin. I have to be on this statin to lower my cholesterol. So there's different camps. So there's people who are just going to be shaking their head going, no, that you're idiots, you're full of rubbish. This is not the way it is. And then there are a lot of people that are really interested, but people get very passionate about cholesterol for some reason. I find it in clinic. I find, so we're going to upset people no matter what we say today. So we're sticking to the science that we've found. We're sticking to the research, all the research we've found. So, but people do get very passionate about this, and there's so much infighting in the industry about this sort of thing as well.
So we know cholesterol is not just one big fat molecule, and I've just lumped it into one big fat molecule. But all I've done is a major study, 12.8 million, and where you want it to be at 6.7 to live the longest. Any lower than that, you die quicker. Any higher than that, you die quicker. So when people say high and low, these numbers, they're nothing.
No.
What is high, what is low? We're going to define that today.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before about Glavov. Now in 1987, this scientist looked at arteries, and what he did was when people died, if they had coronary artery disease, the artery had expanded.
Yes.
Yet the inside of it has still remained the same size.
Yes.
Unless it gets after 40% blocked, that's when it starts to block off. So you want to talk about that and what's that all about?
So the Glavov remodeling is the process of arterial enlargement, so that to accommodate the plaque and maintain the lumen. So when you look, I mean, we've got a bit of a picture here. I can hold up.
You can put it up to the camera there, Nick.
The inside of the artery remains the same. So whether you have early atherosclerosis or advanced atherosclerosis, the actual inside of the artery, the diameter stays the same.
So the same blood flows through.
Same blood flows through everything. So, but the wall, the interior of the wall is pushing outwards. So the diameter stays the same, but the wall thickens, and that's when that plaque is thickening. And then we've talked about previously, it can break through and cause a clot, and then that's what causes that heart attack because it blocks the artery.
Blocks the artery up. And unfortunately, a friend of mine passed away recently because of this. And he's 55 and was not healthy. So, but this is what happens. Now we better cut to the chase, and I want to talk about LDL a lot.
Yes, we'll see. Yeah, this is sort of the main focus today is LDL, but we had to talk about
this is bad, isn't it?
Subfractions. Bad. Yeah. No, it's not bad.
Ooh.
Well, is it bad? Is it not bad?
Well, it depends on the amount, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah, and it depends on the subfractions.
And as I always say, size matters.
Yes, Steve.
It does. The particle size.
In this instance, subparticle size
say
matters.
It. Size matters, Nick.
No, Matt's still laughing in the background.
You can't say it, can you?
No. Oh. I'm going to leave that up to you, Steve.
Okay.
It does. It does matter.
It does matter, yes. Thank you.
Yes. In this instance.
Well, I don't know what other instance you're talking about.
Steve. Terrible. Yes. So we do have subfractions, right? So you want with LDL, do you want it big or small, Nick? So you want large particle sizes, not small particle sizes, right? So when we're talking about LDL subfractions, we have 7 subclasses of LDL.
7 of them, okay.
7 of them. So it's LDL 1 to 7.
Okay.
So LDL 1 and LDL 2, they're more of an average. If they're higher, they sort of open you up to more of an average coronary arterial disease risk. So only an average risk.
Okay.
But the LDL subclasses 3 to 7, they're highly atherosclerotic. So they will give you a 3 times greater rise in cardiovascular disease risk, independent of any other risk factors.
So if you've got lots of LDL and they're big and fluffy, they're ones and twos, you're fine.
Yeah, you just have an average risk in that case. So, but if you have that 3 to 7, any of the 3 to 7s that are high and they're a much smaller particle size, then they are much more dangerous.
All right, so everyone's scrumping through their blood results now and they're looking it out and there's no subfractions.
No subfractions, no.
No subfractions.
Not tested in a general, blood draw from a GP.
That sucks. So you could have high LDL, it could be really bad or fine.
Yeah, so if you have, so that's the thing. So if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, your LDL is way too high, well, what are your subfractions?
Yeah.
What are your particle sizes? Do you have lots of the larger particle size or do you have the, subfractions 3 to 7 that are actually quite small and can be quite dangerous?
Right.
If that's the case, then you really have to worry. So, then we have intermediate density lipoproteins as well. Yeah. And there's subclasses there. So we have large and small. So there's a lot to it.
So you don't want anything small, you want large, don't you?
You want large. And let's just say there is also research to show that even the large can still be a problem, but the problem is much, much less than the small, because you've got to remember anything small can cross over that barrier much easier and infiltrate that barrier much easier than large sizes. So obviously small particle sizes get through very easily. So that's why they're a lot more dangerous than the large ones.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So I guess the big $1 million question, let's just look at LDL as a whole before we, and see what is a high number of LDL.
Yes.
And so I've got some papers on this. And I'm going to read the title, about the longevity of it, but this is a title. It's called The Association of Low-Density Lipoprotein Cholesterol Levels and the Risk of Mortality and Cardiovascular Disease, right? So I've picked them both. And I always pick mortality because death is more important. Having heart disease, bad. Death, worse. Now, this was a study done. I've got my phone out here. I'm not looking at phone to check messages and all that sort of stuff, although there's a webinar on tonight. Anyway, I'm going to use the calculator because I'm going to use American and Australian figures. Okay, this is a meta-analysis, which is the strongest type of evidence of just over 1 million people. And what they found was that our results found that LDL cholesterol lower than 130 milligrams per deciliter was associated with a higher risk of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease. So that's interesting. But what number do we want of LDL? And I've got another study here, which is LDL cholesterol associated with long-term mortality amongst primary prevention adults? So this is people who've just haven't had a heart attack and all that sort of stuff. Yep. And this is published in the British Medical Journal. And what they have found here, that if you want to live the longest, and I've got a graph here, I'm going to put it up to the screen, but, it's a little bit small, that one. You see that one? Mm-hmm. At the very top there, in other words, the longer you live, you want your LDL cholesterol to be 160 to 189. And you might go, well, what's that? Well, let's just do 189, and your 189 divided by 38.5 to convert it to Australian figures. Yep. Your LDL cholesterol should be 4.9.
And what's the cutoff in Australia? 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5 is a cutoff, or under 1.8 in some circumstances if you're diabetic. Yeah. So that's very interesting. And what they found was the lowest level of LDL here, the 30s to 79s, they died the most rapidly. Look at that. Yeah. What does that tell you?
That's a bit different than what we've all been told.
And you're going to go, where are you getting that from? As I said, the British Medical Journal, 2024.
Pretty recent paper.
Big study. Yeah. Meta-analysis. And meta-analysis is a large study, of course, and it's quite incredible. They looked at the electrical medical record data from adults from the 4th of January 2000 through to the 31st of December 2022. Can you believe that? Wow. And they picked adults without diabetes, age 50 to 89, that's most of us, and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. So what did you say? So
4.9 is the upper limit.
Upper limit.
So and then you've got to remember that and what we've already done is we've established total cholesterol should be about 6 to 6.7 and LDL cholesterol should be about 4 to 4.9. Yeah. And we've been told the cholesterol level's got to be below 5.5 at best, or below 4 if you're old like me. Yeah. And I'm not that old. I am. Yeah. So I mean, these studies are in vast contrast to what we've been told.
Yeah.
It's remarkable, isn't it? So very, very interesting.
And that's why The current model of check your HDL, check your LDL, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work anymore.
Because you could have somebody with a LDL of 4.9 and the doctors are freaking out, you're going to go on statins, you're going to die, all this sort of thing. They could have subfractions done and they could have more of the A-type pattern, which is just the less atherogenic, more protective. And so they don't have a risk. So obviously coronary calcium scores, that's another factor that you'd have to look at as well.
That tested.
You did have that. I should get that done now. I'm at a certain age.
28?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I did have that checked because my mother had a heart attack, who's quite healthy, but still alive. She survived. And my dad's had a heart attack. Grandparents, 3 of them had heart attacks, heart disease. So they say heart disease runs in the family. I don't believe that.
No,
I know.
No one runs.
No one runs in the family. Now, because I run, I wore a medal last week.
You did wear a medal last week. I think that comes out today. Well, this will be
today.
Previous will be in the future. We're recording this.
But I had my coronary score, and I had 4 eggs for breakfast this morning, like I normally do. I don't cut fat, do all the wrong things, of course. I had a coronary score, it was 0, and that was about 10 years ago. It was 0, perfectly healthy.
So coronary calcium score measures the amount of calcium in your arteries.
Yes, and calcium is related to the blockage, like the one we talked about, that thing. So I got done. And I was 45 then, and I'm not on drugs or anything like that, or not statins.
No.
Take plenty of drugs.
Drugs. I don't know. I'll question sometimes, Steve.
That white powder was not magnesium out there before, actually. I'm on magnesium today. But anyway, look, and so it was all completely... I remember the cardiologist freaking out with me. He said, no, your cholesterol's a little bit high. It was 4.8 then. It's like...
Total cholesterol.
Total cholesterol, 4.8. Yeah. LDL was about 2 or so. It's always that sort of average. And then he started arguing with me about what I should do for my health, and you shouldn't be eating those eggs.
After he's seen your coronary calcium score and your lipid
after I aced it, I even had an echo stress test, which is when you run on a treadmill, get your heart rate up super high, and then they do an echocardiogram on your chest. It was perfect.
Yeah,
perfect cardiovascular health.
Yeah,
so it's very, very indicative of having a good, healthy heart.
Yeah,
and it's just they just bloody you try to talk me out of it. Those eggs got cholesterol in it, it'll kill you. And we're going to get to that.
We are. We're going to talk about some dietary cholesterols and what that actually means.
But so it's very interesting. We've got to look at the evidence.
Yeah.
Now, we can't rely on dogma. The science is never settled.
That's right. As we've established, as we have found out, we haven't found enough studies to definitively say, yes, high cholesterol is better, but we also haven't found enough definitive studies to say that lower cholesterol is better.
Exactly.
And that's where the line is blurred. And that's where I think we then have to move to looking at subfractions. Looking at risk factors, all that side of
I've got a study here on subfractions here, which I didn't even give to you before, but it basically supports what you said. It says basically the VLDL5 is very atherogenic, which is what you said before. So we're trying to get papers off the here, or papers, Rusty. There's so many studies here.
No.
Basically, again, another paper, I'm just going to read the title of this one. Small LDL subfractions are associated with coronary atherosclerosis despite no differences in conventional lipids. Conventional lipids, nothing. Subfractions, important.
Yeah.
It just says what you said earlier, which is incredible. So you're absolutely correct in that. So do you want to talk about atherogenesis, and you want to talk about the HDL cholesterol?
Yeah, so we'll talk about HDL cholesterol for a second.
The good cholesterol.
High density lipoprotein.
Yep.
It's the good one. It's the one that's protective, should be higher, all that sort of thing. Yes, it does. So it promotes reverse cholesterol transport, which means it takes it out of the body.
Yep.
So it helps to sweep it out, whereas the LDL sort of pushes it towards the heart.
Sounds good so far, Nick. I want more of that.
It has antioxidant qualities, anti-inflammatory qualities, and anti-thrombotic effects, so anti-clotting.
Yep.
So it can be very protective, right? But we don't want to have too higher HDL either. So HDL has a protein attached to it called Apolipoprotein A1.
Yep, Apolipoprotein A1. Yep.
So that's the primary protein associated with high density lipoprotein particles, and it's what plays that central role in that reverse cholesterol transport. So it helps to push everything out.
Cleans your arteries, takes it back to the liver.
Yeah, exactly. So
LDL dumps it out there.
Exactly. So that's inversely related to coronary artery disease risk, which means that it's the opposite effect. So you want to have good levels of ApoA1 proteins on your HDL particles particle. So they are a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every one HDL particle, you have a one Apo-A1 protein attached to that. So if your HDL goes up, so does your Apo-A1 go up.
Well, it sounds like we want tons of this stuff.
So low levels of Apo-A1 can be associated with chronic renal failure.
Oh, don't worry. That's kidney failure for those who are playing along at home.
Yeah, so it can also be genetic as well. So some people that have low HDL and they cannot get it up no matter what they try.
Can't get it up?
They may have a genetic there might be genetic factors involved. It means they can't increase their HDL size.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So Apo-A can be decreased by chronic renal failure, some medications, so beta blockers, diuretics, synthetic progesterone.
Oh my God!
Right? How many?
That's everyone.
Right? How many people are taking synthetic
beta
progesterone?
blockers are for blood pressure.
Yeah.
So if you got cardiovascular risk, the beta blockers screw your HDL.
Yeah.
Diuretics are used for cardiovascular disease as well, particularly potassium sales, screw your heart disease. Yeah. And synthetic progesterone is what every friggin' young woman's on.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm pointing at you when I say young woman.
No, I'm not the young woman. Oh, no, I'm a young woman. I'm just not on progesterone. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, progestin is what they call it.
So synthetic progesterone, progestins. Smoking is another cause, and then uncontrolled diabetes is another cause. Oh. So high levels of Apo-A is usually not a problem. And some, again, may run in the family, higher levels of Apo-A. But it may, I think you've got a paper on what can happen if it's increased.
If it's too high.
If it's too high.
I've got a paper here of what happens if you get too high HDL, because everyone thinks it's great.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you it's not great high.
No.
Firstly, I'll start with this paper. And it states that very high, this is the title of the paper, so I won't need to go too much detail. Very high density lipoprotein levels and cardiovascular disease mortality. Basically, it says very high HDL cholesterol levels are associated with an increased risk of all-cause death and cardiovascular deaths among men, but not women.
I know.
And that's published in the American Journal of Cardiology. Yes. It's like the premier. So when people say, oh, you want loads of HDL, hang on, not too much, too much.
Again, it's a U-shaped curve,
U-shaped relationship, exactly. So now our listeners know what a U-shape means.
Yes.
It makes sense. So you don't want too high levels of HDL. And what they do is that you don't want, more than about 100. So similar about, than before, about 2.5.
Yeah.
You don't want it much higher than that.
No, and I usually get clients to aim for about 2,
a
bit over 2. But I often wonder, I don't think we found a paper on it. Does that apply to women who are postmenopausal, or does then that risk even out for men and women? We don't know.
They just find it. Women and men just suck at this, don't they?
I know.
So so anyway, but I've got more studies here on high HDL, and there's a nice little chart that I probably should have printed out for you.
Yeah,
but basically,
I can get that one, Steve.
What we know is that high HDL destroys your eyes. Mm-hmm. You wait for this one. Causes dementia. You wait for that. Causes diabetes. Increases your risk of infectious diseases, and increases. Look at the picture there. Mortality.
What is that?
It's a guy in a hospital bed.
It's a person in a hospital bed.
Yeah.
Dead. Okay.
So we know that. So to summarise, this is what it says. High levels of HDL cholesterol are established as a potential causal risk factor for eye problems, death, all sorts of things. So really, it's quite scary when you've got high levels of this stuff.
So wait a minute. So we're told LDL, get it as low as you can. HDL, get it nice and high.
Yeah.
Pretty much standard. But now what we're showing is that LDL could be quite a lot higher than they're saying.
Yep.
Obviously taking out risk factors and other and subfractions. And your HDL, you actually want to keep that moderate. You don't want it too high.
You don't want it high.
So very different than what we've all been taught.
Can I just read you one more study from the American Journal of Cardiology?
Yes.
I'm doing American
That wasn't a very good American accent. Sorry to all the American listeners.
Yeah, I'm just offended half. We're going to get messages about this one. Oh, I was told by... I listened to... And what about these other podcasters out there that I mean, I don't listen to them, but you've listened to a few.
I listened to a few just to see other angles. But yes, I as I said in the beginning, I think we'll get a lot of probably people jack up about this because it's a very passionate topic and people are told one thing and they believe it, and then, people may be told something and they shouldn't have, and people haven't been told something and they should have. So we probably will get hate mail. We'll get lots of comments and emails and things about it. But we are sticking to the science, which is what we do. So
Oh, there's another paper.
didn't make up
This is the same one. It's the same journal, American Journal of Cardiology, and it just says that very high cholesterol associated with all-cause death and cardiovascular death in men. So it's just like you just don't want it too high. It's a U-shaped. But the way HDL is promoted is it's the best thing since sliced bread, and we're going to talk about sliced bread later too.
Are we? I didn't know you were talking about sliced bread.
Absolutely, I have. You want to believe it.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so let's get into these subfraction-y things.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's a little picture for people watching
that
at home.
picture's awesome. When I was printing it out for Nick, because Nick put this together, this one, and it's like, oh my God, that is such a cool thing.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing.
Well, explain it for the listeners.
Yeah, so it basically just shows the different particles. So your HDL, your LDL, and then your HDL, your different subfractions. So your 2A, your 2B, 3A, 3B. So they're more, as we said, the more protective in the right amounts.
Yep, the right amounts.
And then you've got your LDLs and you've got, your 1 to 7 subfractions. You've got your intermediate density lipoproteins, 1 and 2. You've got your VLDLs, and then you've got your chylomicrons, which are then bigger lipid particles. So it's basically just shows all basically up the scale of how many there are. So, I mean, you count that this 1, 2, 3, 4, there's probably about 15 different fractions there. So there's a lot to it.
And by the way, if you're wondering how to get all this tested, we're going to tell you at the end of this podcast.
We're going to tell you at the end, yes, you can test for this.
Yeah, you can test.
It's pretty easy to test for.
So, it is pretty easy to test for. So what do we know about this? You mentioned on here. You mentioned here about lipoprotein A.
Yes.
Now that's a bit of a, it's not apolipoprotein A1, it's lipoprotein A. Now, you can get this tested through your doc.
You can, yes. So lipoprotein A, this one is pretty much cut and dry.
Yep. This is
either you don't want it.
You don't want it.
You don't want high amounts of lipoprotein A.
We want to get rid of that.
Yeah, so this is a genetic these are genetic factors.
Yep.
So either you have the genetic propensity and so you have high lipoprotein A, or you don't. So you only really never need to get it tested once.
Yes.
Because if it's not high, then it will never be high. If it is high, then you've got the genetic factor, the genetic profile for that.
We can reduce it with natural medicine, but you'll get to that later.
Yeah, we can. I mean, and the doctors will say, this is it, it's genetic, you can't do anything about it, you're just stuck with it, too bad for you. But there are things that you can do.
Yep.
So, it's linked to higher risk for cardiovascular disease, so heart attack, strokes, irregular heart rhythms, heart valve disease, limited lower body circulation, which can cause a lot of issues. So it can be linked to a lot of pretty nasty things. Yeah, inflammation, all that sort of thing. So 20 to 30% of people are estimated around the world to have elevated levels of lipoprotein A. I think probably more. This is a little bit older study. So now that there's a lot more testing, I think it could be a little bit higher.
So it's probably with 3 people in this room now, one of us has probably got lipoprotein. It's not me, by the way, because I tested.
You have tested. I haven't tested mine. I might test mine.
Sorry?
Not you. Have you tested yours too?
No, just saying it's you.
It's you, yeah.
Wow.
Women have got to get something. You've already bloody get skated through on this one.
I'm really feeling the love right now.
Men get way more heart disease.
Only till women turn menopausal, and then that's even.
Yeah, but you've got 20 years till you turn menopausal.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
But it's good. I'm going to probably speak out of school here, but my wife Beck, right? This is one of the tests I bought for yonks ago, and she's slightly elevated.
Is she?
Lipoprotein A.
Oh, whoops. Yeah. So she's got the genetic factor. Yeah. Okay. So we wanted to bring up lipoprotein A because people inevitably will say, well, what about lipoprotein A?
Yep.
So you either have it or you don't have it. That's sort of where it's at. And yes, it can be quite challenging to reduce lipoprotein A levels.
Well, can't you just take a statin and won't that reduce it?
Oh, well, let me tell you, Steve. This is another factor. So people get put on statins. They have higher LDL, or they put on the statins. So what actually can increase lipoprotein A levels if you already have high levels, Steve?
Guess what?
Statins.
Oh, no.
So statins can
There's
increase
more emails coming in.
lipoprotein A.
My doctor put me on this. Oh. Well, again, this is the literature. We can't sort of, we can't sugarcoat it.
No. But I mean, obviously people who don't have lipoprotein A and they're on a statin, it's not going to impact.
No.
It's not going to, because they don't have high levels. Yeah. But if you do, and you're on a statin, it's probably not. Maybe look into that a little bit further. But
you can reduce it if you go see a naturopath like Nicole Brown, naturopathy, if they see you, because there's a couple of things that can reduce it.
There is a few things that can reduce it. So niacin
niacin, that's vitamin B3, yeah.
Yeah, so it can reduce them. Fish oil also can reduce them as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Two cool things.
That's right. What does fish oil do? Increases your HDL.
It does too.
Yeah.
It does too.
Yeah. So, but primarily I would see low HDL levels on blood tests for the majority of the time, below 1. As an average below 1, I might see them around 2 sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so niacin, lysine and proline can also work for some people as well.
Proline?
Yeah. So amino acids.
That's rich in foods like collagen.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It actually is. We didn't line that up.
Yeah, just thought that.
So lysine, so I use lysine, but proline as well can be part of it. And CoQ10 and fish oil. So this is more anecdotal, but there we have seen it work. So CoQ10, I mean, we put CoQ10 in for a lot of anything cardiovascular related. And then lipoprotein E is really irritating to that to the endothelium of the artery. Ooh. So you want to sort of protect that a little bit. So vitamin C, high dose vitamin C can really help protect against that irritation of the artery wall. So there's some things, and statins potentially can increase lipoprotein A by 10 to 20%.
Jesus.
Yeah, and we've got the link to the study if anyone wants that. Believe us.
It's just like, we're going to cop a bit over that. Okay, so we've talked about lipoprotein A. What about Apolipoprotein B? There's 2 types. There's the 48 and there's the 100.
There is.
Where are they? Where's that stuff made? Let's start that.
Okay, so Apolipoprotein B is attached to our LDL particles.
Attached to LDL.
So as you said, we have Apo-B 100 and Apo-B 48.
Yes.
So Apo-B 48 is created in the intestines, and they don't generally test for that one. So don't worry about that one too much.
Yeah.
So it's an integral part of the structure of the chylomicrons, which are the big fatty particles.
Things,
large lipoproteins that are essential for the initial transport of dietary lipids.
Yep.
So it's a protein. It's essential part of the LDL lipoprotein. So and the VLDL particles. It helps. So it has a purpose. It's not just there to annoy us and cause damage. So it helps provide structural integrity to complexes. It helps to direct transport of the water soluble lipids. So it does have functions. It's there. Nothing in the body is there for no reason or there to cause us harm. They're all there for a reason.
There's so many roles in cells and making hormones and all sorts of even stress hormones, cortisol.
Yeah. So the liver, obviously we don't know the liver is involved in cholesterol. So it helps. So the liver packs the lipids and then attaches the Apo-B to that to form triglyceride-rich VLDL. So lipoprotein lipase is an enzyme mainly produced in fat cells, and it helps through, it removes, but not other tissues. And then LPL removes triglycerides from VLDL to create first intermediate density lipoproteins and then so intermediate density lipoproteins first and then LDL.
Okay.
So low density lipoproteins.
Good.
But you don't want too high levels of your Apo-B, right? So eventually they can possibly be a better risk factor of atherogenesis and than the LDL itself.
Yes.
So that's why we want to look at the particle size, because the particle size matters and the numbers. So the Apo-B levels do matter.
Yep.
So
isn't it like we've already blown so many things out of the water here? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind that it all ends up clogging your arteries, which clogs the arteries to your heart, and then you literally keel over if it's too bad.
Yep, exactly.
So, let's talk about some risk factors for heart disease, and let's talk about genetic risk factors. And I'm going to say a big word for you, Apolipoprotein E 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
What do you want?
So Apo-E, let's bring in another one in, Steve, just because it's not complicated enough.
Okay, so this is a genetic thing.
Yeah, this is a genetic thing.
Okay, so if you got this, it's like, that's it.
Yeah. So there's, as you said, there's 3 types: E2, E3, E4.
Yep.
So E3 is the lowest risk genotype, and it's what most commonly found in people. E3. Yep. E2 is associated with lower elimination of triglycerides from the blood. So it can, you can cause higher levels of triglycerides, and we don't want higher levels of triglycerides, obviously, either. But Apo-E4.
Oh,
is a baddie. I found in 1 in 4 people, this one. And it's associated with the highest cardiovascular disease risk. And what else, Steve?
Well, the worst part of it is if you have what they call a homogenesis for apolipoprotein E4, and homo means the same. So if you've got 2 genes, a pair of apolipoprotein E4s, you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
About 3% of the population have that, so it's not too many.
Yeah.
But a lot of us have, as you said, one of them, which is still bad.
Yeah.
And we know someone who's got, your boyfriend has got apolipoprotein E4 times 2.
Hang on a minute.
Your boyfriend. I mentioned him this morning to you.
What?
Someone you drool over.
Oh.
She knew now.
Okay.
Now I'm not giving away anything medical records.
Yeah, he's my boyfriend for sure.
He's your boyfriend?
Yeah, he's my boyfriend.
He's hot, isn't he? He's hot, isn't he?
Oh, look, I find him like I appreciate the structure of him.
Oh, okay? That's the most politically correct.
And he's a very talented person, and that's what I admire more than anything.
Yeah, he reads lines well. Yep.
Yeah.
But who is he?
Danny DeVito, Matt says. Like that, Matt. That's
he's an actor, an Aussie actor.
He's an Aussie actor. So Chris Hemsworth, and this is public knowledge.
Yeah.
So we're not saying anything that's not already known.
No.
But yeah, so he does. But what's the other thing that's really commonly found with people that have this genetic
Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. So if you've got this genetic profile, Alzheimer's, hypercholesterolemia, so high risk. So Apo-E genotype is
And Chris has the pair.
Does he have the pair?
He has the pair.
Chris. But
Oh, Chris.
I'm sure he listens to this for sure.
Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. He's only down at Byron Bay. He's not
he moved.
Where does he live now, Nick? Are you stalked outside his house?
A stalker, I don't know.
Where does he live now? I don't know.
No, yeah. All the movie stars are moving out of Byron Bay, apparently.
Really?
Yeah, because I was looking at, I wanted to buy down there, and I'm like, he's moved now, so I'll have to follow him somewhere. No, I'm joking.
And the $64,000 question is, do you test for this? Knowing that you're at a higher risk, and then you could, it's a really...
See, this is my thing. We were talking about this yesterday, I think, on genetic testing, and a lot of people used to be a bit wary of genetic testing, and even I, when I first started in clinic, I was like, I don't know about genetic testing. I'm actually all for it now.
Wow.
Because the more and more you see now, we have so much amazing technology and these testing ability to map our genes and all that sort of thing. Would you not want to know? Because just because you have the genetic profile does not always mean that you will end up with that condition. So there's an epigenetic involvement, obviously.
Correct.
So if you know that you have, say, like Chris Hemsworth, the Apo-E genotype, then you can try and, live your life in a way that means you won't actually, express that gene.
Exactly. Be more conscious of your health.
Yeah.
You look after your brain more. Take fish oils, turmerics, all these things that can prevent Alzheimer's disease. We should do a podcast on it because I think now that, in the past, people would say, I don't know if I'm going to get Alzheimer's or cardiovascular disease.
I have a very close friend who has a mother who has Alzheimer's, and she can get a little bit forgetful, but she's not tested. My grandmother had dementia.
So did mine.
Yeah.
Severe. Mine had Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
My mother's mother had Alzheimer's. My mother is 81, still alive, as clear as a bell. Spoke to her this morning on the phone on the way up.
Yeah.
So, she's still quite good. My dad's 88, still quite good. So that's good news for me. But my grandmother had it, and my mother is actually, and I think I am too, I haven't been tested for this, but the methyltetrine hydrofolate problem, because my mother had high homocysteine. And I've had mine tested and it's very low, but I take care of myself.
Yeah.
My mother, I put her on, and we don't, look, I don't sell this product, so I'm not, but it's called methyl factors, and that reduces her homocysteine levels down. I got her on fish oils and ubiquinol, which we're going to talk about later, CoQ10.
Yeah.
So do you get tested for the apolipoprotein?
I'm actually more for genetic testing now because we now know that you can do something about it. Whereas previous, we were always told your genes, that's it, you're doomed. Whereas now we know that's not entirely the case. But if you don't know you have the risk factors and you're living a lifestyle that maybe push you more towards than expressing that genetic profile, then you're in trouble. But if you know, so I actually think genetic testing is actually a really good idea.
So Nick,
yes,
we don't want apolipoprotein E4, and Chris has got it. He's got the pair, which is sad. He's a young man. He's I don't know how old he is, 40. But he's younger than me.
Yeah. Everyone's younger than you, Steve.
Moses wasn't. No.
Well, he lived by a year or so.
Yeah,
right?
he lived to 900 and something. Oh,
yeah,
no,
that's true.
A few of the Bible characters live longer than me, but not many others.
Yeah, that's true.
Someone lived to 900
You're in good company.
In the Bible. Can't remember
Did
who
they?
it was. Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Even the guy, Noah, lived in his hundreds. So, yeah.
That's because he spent all his time with animals.
Yes, yeah.
They lower your stress levels.
They lower, yeah. Except you got a German Shepherd. It's a bit scary looking. But, yeah, so, all right. So this is very interesting. So what are the, okay, so it's not really related to cholesterol, but I want to talk about inflammation a little bit here.
Yeah.
Tell me about 2 tests for inflammation that everyone should be checked, which go with heart disease, but go with cholesterol in a weird roundabout way. Yeah.
So when we're looking at drivers of high cholesterol, one of them is inflammation.
Yes.
So we have to talk about inflammation, obviously. So when I get general blood tests done, I always get CRP, high sensitivity CRP. It's more accurate.
C-reactive protein.
C-reactive protein. I also get ESR. So
erythrocyte sedimentary rate.
Thank you. Yeah. So they're the 2 standard ones. But there is another one that you can get called lipoprotein associated phospholipid A2.
Oh my God.
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah. Can we just say what do we call it? PLA2?
LPPLA2?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so PLA2.
Yeah.
So this one is actually a little bit more specific than even the high sensitivity CRP.
Yeah.
And it's not as widely tested.
No,
in Australia, it's not tested for really at all.
I don't think any doctors test for it.
Not generally, but they will do the high sensitivity CRP. So high sensitivity CRP. So that one, at least I would be at least getting that, if nothing else. So it can be high when you have genetic polymorphisms, high in diabetes and obesity. There's lots of things that can push up
if
CRP,
it goes over 50, CRP is usually a bacterial infection, a very bad one. A friend of the family's, well, she's basically part of the family. She's she had her CRP level of 380 something.
Oh, wow, that's high.
Nurse Beck went over there and took her to hospital.
That is, I mean, to put it in perspective, you want it below 5, but ideally 0.
Yeah.
So hers is 300 and something. She's
380 something. A couple of months ago.
Wow.
And now she had it tested and she's still not feeling well. She's 3.3, which is still elevated.
That's still elevated, yeah.
So this thing is a remarkable marker. So inflammation is great. So just tell me, how do we reduce inflammation? I know this is not an inflammatory podcast, but supplements. Does statins reduce it?
Statins will reduce.
Yep.
Yes, it will reduce HSCRP and the PLA2.
Yep.
Niacin will also reduce them. Omega-3 fatty acids reduce it. We all know that.
Yep.
Diet, depending on the diet. But we've talked many times about how to reduce inflammation, but also find the cause of the inflammation, please first, before you start to try to reduce it, because what's the point?
Family friend who was a severe bacterial infection ended up in the hospital with severe IV antibiotics and all sorts.
Well, there you go. So if you try to reduce someone's got high CRP and you just, let's go and get some anti-inflammatories and reduce that. Well, for one point, the CRP's inflammation's high for a reason.
Yeah.
Your body's increasing the inflammation to try to kill off the bacteria.
At that level, it's usually 90% bacterial infection.
Yeah.
According to Cleveland.
You see a lot in inflammatory bowel disease and things like that.
All right, so we don't want inflammation because that causes oxidation of LDLs and all sorts of crap, which makes things a hell of a lot worse. What else do you want to talk about that just quickly, and we can then get on to how to solve all this.
Lipoprotein PLA2.
Yeah.
So that LPPLA2 is one that is really specific for the inflammation, but and we will talk about testing at the end and things that you can do.
And diet and supplements.
Yeah, so let's go into diets now, because we've come up with some pretty cool stuff related to diets and cholesterol too, Steve.
What's the one thing you hear, and I'll sort of answer my own question. You hear that, okay, firstly, there's 2 aspects I want to talk about, which is dietary cholesterol, because you can eat cholesterol.
Yeah.
It's in eggs and stuff. And saturated fats. They're demons, aren't they? They're the work of the devil. They're bad. Okay, so I want to talk about cholesterol first, eating cholesterol. And I'm going to, this study published in Nutrients. The title is, it's perfect. It's perfect. Is there a correlation between dietary and blood cholesterol? That's the title. Is there a correlation?
Meaning that if you eat dietary cholesterol, will it increase your
Now, from a common sense
cholesterol.
point of view, it does. It's like you eat it, it's in there, it gets absorbed, it increases it. So in the 1960s, they came out, and right up till 1977, they said you've got to restrict your dietary cholesterol intake to minimal, blah, blah, blah. And then they had a level that was safe.
It's the low fat.
Yeah, this is Ansel Keys,
yes,
who came out with this that looked at a correlation study, but correlation doesn't mean causation.
That's right.
So anyway, they looked at this massive study, and they looked at a meta-analysis, which is all the data on it and everything. I'm just going to read the conclusion. We confirm from this review of the literature on epidemiological studies, meta-analysis and clinical interventions, so they literally gave people cholesterol, like told them to eat super-duper shrimp and eggs and all that sort of stuff. Basically, there is not a direct correlation between cholesterol intake and blood cholesterol. The lack of correlation is mainly due to the compensatory mechanism exerted by the organism, human, to regulate this. Because if you eat it, it doesn't increase it because the body just makes less.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, you and I know this is kind of common sensey things, but there's still a cohort out there that is probably listening and saying, well, I've got high cholesterol. I've got to cut my cholesterol intake.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
That's not it.
No.
So that's one of the dietary things I want to talk about.
Yeah.
The other one is the elephant in the room is saturated fat. Because everybody says, you got to cut saturated fat. Is that the boogeyman? Now, remember I said I can say boogeyman in this podcast?
Yes, you did say that.
There's a great paper published in the European Society of Cardiology, 2022. And it said saturated fat, villain and bogeyman in the development of cardiovascular disease, ? Is it a villain? Is it a thing? Basically, they say that, and I'm just going to read this out, findings from the studies, all reviewed studies, so it's all the studies, in the paper indicate the consumption of saturated fat is not significantly associated with cardiovascular risk events or mortality. Death.
Wow.
So, and they go on to conclude and say, quote, based on the scientific evidence, there is no scientific ground to demonise saturated fats as a cause of cardiovascular disease, especially if saturated fats naturally occurring in nutrient-dense foods, like eggs and steak and all that sort of stuff. So isn't that interesting?
So someone that's on a ketogenic diet that suddenly is going, oh, my God, my saturated fats, my cholesterol, I can't have, then, yes, that's completely fine. But then there's two schools of thought there as well, because saturated fats, it can increase your LDL levels.
It does.
But
is that bad?
Exactly. And that's where we sort of, when we start to go back and forth. So people are saying, and then carbohydrates can reduce LDL levels. Yeah. But then what can carbohydrates do? Increase your triglycerides, right?
I've got a carbohydrate thing for you here.
Oh.
But I'll just stick with I'll talk about carbohydrates in a sec.
Yeah.
I want to talk with cholesterol, and I'm going to say something pretty weird here. I want you to eat cholesterol.
Okay. Great.
Because eating it does something different to you.
Does it?
Yeah.
Me specifically, or are you talking to everyone?
I'm talking to males and females. I'm looking at you because you're the only one I'm talking to. If I talk to Matt, it looks weird on camera.
You can talk to the camera.
I'm looking at the camera. Yep. I want you to eat cholesterol. Now you're going to go, what the hell is he talking about? Okay, we've just established it doesn't increase cholesterol in your blood.
Yep.
But when you supplement your diet, it can go into your body and go to your brain. Now, what does that do? Let's have a look.
Let's have a look.
What they find here is a study, and this is the Framingham offspring cohort study. It's a major study that's been going on for 2023. This paper is published in the Journal of Preventative Alzheimer's Disease. So I guess where this is going.
You can see.
It says the title of the paper, so people can complain. But you can write to these guys. High intake of dietary cholesterol decreases the risk of all-cause dementia and Alzheimer's disease dementia. Results from the Framingham cohort study. So what this paper says is high intake of dietary cholesterol was associated with a decreased risk of all-cause dementia and Alzheimer's disease dementia. So that's the study.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? How much does it reduce it by? Well, this is what they did was they test thousands of people in this, and they measured them for over like 10 years and up to 20 years, actually 20.2 years. So it's a long follow-up. So these
are the offspring of the original Framingham study.
Because they're all dead now.
That's right. So it continued on to the next generation.
But it reduces dementia. It's called a HR, which is a risk ratio of 0.7. In other words, 1 does nothing. 1 point something means it increases it, but 0.7 means it decreases it by 30%.
Yeah.
And Alzheimer's disease decreases Alzheimer's disease by 32%.
That's a fairly big one.
So consuming cholesterol is good for your brain.
Yep.
Doesn't affect your blood levels.
No.
It just gets in your body and good for your brain. How does all this work? We don't know yet. This 2023 paper. But I'm sure we'll work out that there's some benefit of dietary cholesterol. Now, there is a caveat to this, that dietary cholesterol is often found with eggs, which have got things like choline.
Yes.
And all the essential minerals are very good for your brain.
Yeah.
So, and eggs are high in saturated fat, so we're told not to eat them.
Yeah.
Even though I eat 4 a day.
I'm
not
eggs,
dead yet. And it's funny because this is where you see influencers online, and there's a lot of them lately, and maybe it's just what I look at. They're eating a lot of eggs and, massive amounts of steak and carnivore diets and that sort of thing. And we're not suggesting, or we're not going into the carnivore diet, but
I'm not going into that right now, but yes.
This, if people say, well, what happens when you eat all that cholesterol? I say, well, you reduce your risk of Alzheimer's and dementia is what you do, and it doesn't change your blood levels.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
That's interesting. I mean, look, we have cholesterol in our body for a reason.
Yep.
Our brain is mainly fat. So it makes sense that this is what our body needs.
Now, you said before size matters.
You said that, Steve.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, size of saturated fat matters.
Yes.
Okay. If it's a short saturated fat or a medium chain triglyceride, MCT, good.
Yep.
Long, bad.
Yeah.
The diets ones we get from butter, butyric acid, short. Medium chain triglycerides from coconut, saturated. Coconut's the richest source of saturated fat.
It is, yes.
Better, more, and that's medium chain.
Yes.
So that's good.
Yeah.
So those saturated fats, but there is one that's bad, and it's called palmatic acid. And guess where we get palmatic acid from?
Where, Steve?
Well, I'll read this paper. It's a review article, and it's a Journal of Clinical Lipidology, 2023, and it says diet-derived and diet-related endogenously inside produce palmatic acid. Effects on cardiovascular risk factors. Okay, so that's the name of the title. Published, of course, in the Journal of Clinical Lipidology. I think I've said that. And what they found here is that a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet increases the risks of plasma palmatic acid. So incredibly important that if you have a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet, you'll end up with loads of bad saturated fats in your body, which increase heart disease.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Now, what were you told in the 1960s, Nick, when you were around?
I don't remember.
You were told by all the heart thing to have a low-fat diet.
Low-fat diet, yeah.
High-carbohydrate diet.
Yep.
Heart-healthy diet, they used to call it.
They did used to call it that, yes. So, and of course, we're going to get other hate mail again about this as well.
It's going to happen.
Sure. But yes, look, we can only go with what the science says.
Yep, and as I said, size matters. This is another paper showing that the longer the carbohydrate, as I said before, but it's a supportive. It basically says saturated fatty acid, chain length, and risk of cardiovascular disease. Long bad, short good. That's the long and short of it.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
Yeah.
Is that good?
That's right.
So that's the whole. That's a bit of a diet thing. But you got anything you want to talk about with diet and that sort of thing?
So we can talk a little bit about So let's talk a little bit about what things can we do.
Oh yeah.
So some of these we did talk about in the previous podcast.
Yep.
So sort of treatment strategies and things like that. Look, I still love the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I love it. It never changes for me because it's got a bit of everything. It's got your healthy fats in there. Yeah. It's got your omega-3s in there. It's got your protein in there. It's got some fibre in there. So as a general, if you're just not sure where the hell do I go with diet, what do? I just start with a Mediterranean diet. You can break off into keto and carnivore and all the different sub-diets if you want to, depending on your situation. But just as a start, Mediterranean diet is really good.
Yeah, people think it's just a bowl of pasta.
Oh, no.
It's nothing like
so
that.
I go for more the low carbohydrate Mediterranean style diet. So I'm not a massive fan of grains. I don't have a problem with some grains, but I don't really do a lot of grains. So more the lower carbohydrate, making sure you get good fats and, your fats and things in there. So carbohydrate regulation, as you said. So we've said in the past, eat your carbs to your lifestyle. So if you're an athlete, obviously high carbohydrate,
like
because
Nick.
carbs are like carbohydrates.
You are?
No, not these days, Steve.
Well, I've seen photos of you.
I was an athlete, yeah.
Was.
You're
still lean.
I'm not going to be that one that says, I was an athlete in the years and now I'm not. I'm not. I still train, but I don't compete.
I remember when it used to drive me nuts when I used to see patients and they'd say, you'd say, do you exercise? Oh, in 30 years ago, I was a football player. It's like, what the hell, you're living in the past a bit. People say, or I used to be active, or I'm trying to be healthy, or I'm looking to it's like, asking what the hell are you doing? Not what you're thinking of possibly maybe used to doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
here's another one. Matt will enjoy this because I'm reading all about the Confucius. Don't try, Steve, just do.
Just do.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, there is no try, only do. But no, there is no try, just do.
Yeah.
You're trying, you're not doing. You just got to do it. Anyway, back to me. So you want to base your carbohydrates to your goals. So if you're very active, you can have some more carbohydrates. If you have a very sedentary lifestyle, you don't really need a lot of those complex carbohydrates, right? Exercise. We've talked about it. We don't need to talk about it anymore, but we bang on about it. Exercise, it is the solution for so many different things.
Do it.
Stress management, of course, because high stress does really impact our cardiovascular health. CoQ10.
Yep.
Now, we talk about this a lot for anything cardiovascular. Yep. So ubiquinol, we've also spoke about that, particularly if you're over 50, because you can't convert the ubiquinone to the ubiquinol. You lose that enzyme. So this one reduces, it converts small LDL particles to larger size. So when we're talking about the particle size, we want to know how do we flip from smaller particle sizes to the large.
So large is better.
So CoQ10,
yes,
ubiquinol form, that actually can help with that conversion. As we said, lysine, and I talked about this little recipe in the last podcast as well, which was lysine, vitamin C and vitamin E, that little combination there. It's really good for antioxidants, of course, so that's helping with any of that irritation to those epithelial lining. It is, and then the lysine obviously helps with that dissolving the lipoprotein A plaques.
Yes.
So I find that's a really good combo. I take vitamin E, tocotrienols, not tocopherols. So there's just so much in it, but high antioxidant, very, very good for cardiovascular health. So that's a good, really, it's a good little sort of combo. K2, talked about that previously.
Vitamin,
takes the plaque, the calcium out of the arteries, puts it back in the bone. So it's very good for bone health, very good for cardiovascular health. Nicotinic acid, as we said. So you want the flushing form. You don't want the slow release, because the slow release, when they did all those studies and they said it doesn't do anything, it's rubbish. They use the slow release form. You've got to use the one that flushes.
Yeah, nicotinic acid.
Yeah, nicotinic acid. So bergamot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have been using this in clinic and I have been seeing some good results.
Really?
Yeah. So I see quite a few people with cholesterol issues.
Okay.
So it's a plant, it's a polyphenol, but it has a lot of really good cardiometabolic factors. And it's another one that shifts the small particle, LDL particle size to larger. So it's a really good one as well.
That's what we want. Doesn't have to lower it, just have to shift it.
Shift it, yeah. Omega-3s, obviously. And then if you're on a statin, obviously CoQ10, K2, selenium and vitamin D, because they're all quite depleted with that.
Wow.
And then I have another one, Steve, that I've been using that I find quite interestingly is working well. So a PCSK9 inhibitor. So there's drugs that are PCSK9.
They're the new anti-cholesterol drugs. Yeah.
Yep. And they're showing quite good, evidence that they're working quite well. But of course, like any medication, there's side effects. So a natural PCSK9 inhibitor is berberine.
Wow, berberine's in so many herbs.
I use berberine. I do use it a lot. And I'm again I see quite good results with cholesterol levels reducing with the berberine. It's also antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, all of those other things. So that's a really good one, berberine. And then red yeast rice. Yeah, is another one that's probably been around for a long time, but a lot of people maybe don't know it. So that can lower cholesterol levels. So it's got one of the compounds is the same ingredient that's in lovastatin. Yeah. So red rice yeast, I'm getting pretty good results with that as well. Good. So there is things you can do. So, if you have more of the atherosclerotic pattern type. So when we're talking about testing,
yes.
there's
Well, let's talk
two
about
patterns.
testing, because we've talked about all these weird subfractions and sizes and all this sort of stuff. It's very complex for the average punter who's driving along in the car or at the gym on the walking machine going, what the hell? What
do I do? I don't even know what to do anymore.
I've been to the doctor. They don't know about the particle sizes. They've done LDL, HDL. That's all they do because that's all Medicare covers, understandably. But let's say you're serious about this and you really want to know what's going on. What do you do?
So you can get your subfractions tested.
Right.
It's not a hard thing to do.
No.
You generally have to go through a practitioner. There's a lot more. Yeah, there's a lot more sites now that you can get testing done. So maybe there's somewhere you can get, iScreen and that do some, but I don't know if they do subfractions. But I test subfractions quite often.
Yeah.
It is out of pocket, obviously, because it's not Medicare funded because we're private. We're not GPs.
Do you know how much it costs?
It's around about $200.
Well, for your heart risk factors, it's not the end of the world.
I don't think that's a lot of money. Sorry, I got the hiccups now.
That's how you fix it.
That's how you fix it. So it's not a lot of money when you're looking at your health. Yeah. And if you have high LDL, well, depending, obviously we've tried to see. So I don't even know what to say. You
showed me a patient before that had 6 point something LDL, which is too high.
Yeah, it was 9 point something, but we have them on berberine.
Oh, right. So it dropped to 6.
A few other things, and it's dropped. So it actually dropped fairly quickly.
So they've got familial hypercholesterolemia, which runs in the family cholesterol.
Yeah. So I see quite a few people with that. So this is a test that I use for people who are watching. Wow. I'm just crossing
Beautiful
the name,
colours.
so there's no name. But this basically is the test that I do, and it tests for all your subfractions. So it tests for your HDL, LDL, your VLDL, your IDL, your LDL 1 to 7, your HDL sub 1, sub 2, your lipoprotein A, all that sort of thing. So it's a very extensive test. So and they're very easily accessible through a practitioner. Yeah. So there's things you can do, and I really would love the medical model to change and to change the way that they're testing lipids from away from the old archaic HDL, LDL. If it's high, you're in trouble. If it's not, you're okay, because there's so much more to it, as we've shown. So subfractions is definitely a huge factor. You need to look at that. You need to see whether you have high lipoprotein A levels. Yeah. But also with a lot of the science that we've shown today, high LDL can be actually better for longevity, overall health. There's so many factors involved.
Not super high, but high.
Not super high, yeah. And then the HDL, not super high, but moderate. But there's a lot of other factors involved, and that's why getting subfractions tested is a good idea. Yeah. But, if everything's great and you don't have any sort of risk factors and your subfraction pattern is great and your LDL is sitting higher, science says that we've looked at actually more protective for longevity. So at the end of all of this, we're really still up in the air because the science obviously is never settled and there's so much conflicting evidence. But from what we've looked at, and as we could have gone down a rabbit hole for another week and still probably come out even a head spinning of a more.
We're not just here to blab. We have to tell a story in about an hour, and that's what we've had to do. It's like you could talk for this for a week, really.
You could, yeah. So, and as I said, it's controversial, and we're probably going to get hate mail, and we're going to get people that will disagree, and that's fine. We like people to.
I'll just give them your email address.
Thanks, Steve. That's great. Just redirect.
But I mean, we're looking at the data, so they can write to the American Journal of Cardiology if they want to, if they beef about it.
Yeah.
Well, don't shoot the messenger here. I don't do the report.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a very highly emotionally charged subject for some reason. But I guess when you're talking about your health and your cardiovascular health, people do get a little bit concerned, and if the doctor's telling them one thing, and someone else is saying something else, it can get very confusing. So we've tried to lay out as much science as we can within the time frame that we have to see if we can get a little more clarity.
Look, it's still high cholesterol is bad, but what is high?
Yeah.
Low cholesterol is bad, but what is low?
Yeah. And then what are the other factors involved in that?
Yeah.
So
amazing, Nic. This has been incredible. As I said, I was nervous about doing something, but I think we got through most of the stuff.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah. Ooh. So hopefully people get something out of it, good, bad or otherwise.
All right.
Maybe, look, if we can get them thinking then we've done our job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Well, look after your own health, people out there. And if you want any further tests, Nicole Brown, Drop This, you can order these tests for you. Excellent. All right. Well, you have a great day, and we'll see you all next week.
See you guys.
See ya. You seen the size of my nuts?
Yes, Steve.
It's a big container of nuts.
Seen the size of your packet of mixed salted nuts. All right, so you want good. Sorry. All right, start again. So oh no, now I'm going to get the giggles. Crying. Okay, no, that's Apo-A. Oh, no, I never knew where he lived. I just knew he lived in Byron. I'm just going to move on right now. Let me just read it first. Sorry, okay, because I can't remember it. Yeah.